Hey guys, welcome back. And today we're actually going to hack around the new backend system for Backstage and understand how to migrate a Hello World plugin that's in the backend plugin architecture state that's in GA and migrate over to that new one that's in alpha. It came up because I was working on tutorial 2 for my Backstage series, and I realized that there's this new backend system, and then I paused and was playing with it. So thanks for joining me today. I'm Danny Fries, your host. Okay guys, so the first thing we're going to do for Backstage is navigate to getting started and go ahead and install Backstage so that we can play with it locally. They have a lot of installation options. I went ahead and just used Node.js to do it. So I'm just going to copy this command right here. I'm going to call this Backstage code freeze. And then that's going to take a hot second. Like a really long hot second. So I'll be back when this is done. Okay, so that's finally successfully installed. And the next step is to run the Backstage app just to make sure everything's going okay. And it says in the documentation, we're going to run the yarn dev command. It will run both the front end and the back end as two separate processes. Let's go ahead and do that. So within my directory, I've got a Backstage code freeze. I'm navigating to there, and I'm just going to do yarn dev. And that's going to take a second. Let's see. It like takes a hot second to load. Yeah, there we go. Because it's not quite. So Backstage does actually require a database, and when you're running in dev, it's just kind of using like some ephemeral example that it's got in there. And then there's two pieces. So the front end's up, but the back end is not quite up, which is why we're seeing these failed to fetch errors. Yeah, okay. So if you go home, you can see there's an example, and the examples come up. And so this is an example component. Great, perfect. That's what we need. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down, and we're going to get started on building a backend plugin. So going back to the documentation, I'm going to close the overview, or I'm going to close getting started. I'm going to go to plugins and not create a Backstage plugin. It's actually backends and APIs. Backend plugin. Yeah, so a backend plugin. Let's go ahead and create a bare bone backend plugin. I'm going to call this backend plugin code freeze. Code freeze hello. So we can kind of really see the difference. Not get lost. And you can see that it's creating this under a plugin in the plugins directory. And it's instantiating this template. Great, it's done. Let's go ahead and look at the tree. So actually within Backstage, if we navigate into the plugins directory, plugins, go to plugins, boop. Let's just tree this because it's really small. You can see that now there is a code freeze hello world, and it appends hyphen backend to it, so that's the convention. But the plugin name is code freeze hello world. Okay, but this plugin is structured. Let's open this up in. Where do I want to open this? Yeah, let's navigate to the parent directory. Oops. Of Backstage, I'm going to go open this up here and do it from VS Code because it's a little bit easier to see. Right. Okay, great. And close that. I know this is probably going to be really small, and if I were here, you would yell at me. But I'm going to do it anyways. Okay, so if we go to plugins, code freeze, hello world, source, service, and router, you can see that we're exporting this function called create router, and what it does is instantiates an express router, and it's just going to provide this /health endpoint get /health endpoint, and with a status code of JSON object of status. Okay, cool. That's all it does. And so this is in the backend system that is in GA, but we're going to do a migration to the new backend system that's in alpha. So how do we do that? Well, this is where I got a little lost and had to really kind of like, well, I mean, I think it took me about putatively an hour of hacking around. So if I go to new backend system and I go to building plugins and modules, there's a migration guide. And the migration guide says that, so we originally have this source service router. Okay, in our example, we also have a source service router. We can reuse the router, and we just need to shift it over, and now we need to create this backend plugin that is going to be in the I think it's going to be in plugin.ts. No, it's not in here. You know where I had to do? I went back to overview, creating a new plugin. Here we go. And then it said a basic backend plugin might look like this. And then I noticed that this create backend plugin was actually under source plugin TS. Okay, so that's what I did. So that's what we're going to do first is I'm going to go to source. I'm going to go to my plugin and I'm going to create a plugin.ts file. And then I was trying to understand this. And so what I did was I found a bunch of examples on the internet. Okay, so I found a GitHub issue that kind of someone else was asking for examples on how to do the migration as well. And someone from Backstage responded with a bunch of examples. Haha. And the to-do is a pretty simple one, so I started there. So I use this as the baseline for understanding the whole structure. And I'm very visual, so I get a little lost. I get lost very quickly. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty simple. So I kind of borrowed this as the baseline where I could see it has a service. It's importing the create router, and it needed some of these new imports, and then it's going to basically instantiate the service and the router, and then make sure that the create router is ready to go. So we're going to do the same thing. And what I'm going to do is actually just going to copy this guy into my plugin and start the refactor. So we don't have a service. The create router is still under service router, so that's good. We're going to call this plugin what do we call it? Code freeze hello. Call it code freeze hello. That is gonna be important. So, and then we obviously are not creating that as a dependency. No. And then same thing. But I'm throwing errors. So what are the errors? The errors are that my router actually needs the logger from the options, and so I got hung up on that. And I had to look at a couple of other examples of how to get that done. So what I did actually was I found that some of the other examples, I think it was Kafka maybe. Some of these other examples also have loggers, and then I was wondering how they got this into a logger. And I noticed that, so it's a dependency now, and then we have to actually, but it's still through another error. And so they actually had to use another function to convert it into the to a Winston logger. So I went ahead and did that. So let's do that together. Let's get that logger fixed. Waiting this out. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this import. I'm going to need that. It's going to whine that I don't have it. And then I'm going to go into my dependencies, and I like to have the logger up top. I need that logger. And then I need to go ahead and add it to the router. So I'm going to do logger is a logger to Winston. Oh yeah, we don't need the env. It's right there. Oh yeah, I didn't pass it in. Boop. And now we should be good to go. Okay. So that's all I needed to do to, oh yeah, no, and the last thing is the export. So instead of exporting this, we're going to export everything from, the export has changed. The export has changed. Yes, here we go. Change our export as default, but we're going to call this code freeze hello. Here we go. Change the plugin name, plugin ID. This is going to matter. We should be good to go. So that's everything I had to do to migrate the simple hello world. That is not everything we had to do though, because now it's about making sure that this backend plugin is instantiated into the new backend system. And that's where I had to go into building backends and move over to the migration guide. And it talks again about the structure. We've got the index, the types, and a folder inside where it's going to list all of the plugins. And this was the original, or where the backend system looks, that's GA right now. We have to migrate this index file such that it looks like this. And so let's go ahead and get started. So if we go over to packages, backend, source index, it's very long, but you can kind of see, yeah, it's got all these API routers, these side by side. Man, so many files. There we go. That looks nicer. You can see it's got all of these API routers that are being instantiated in the main function. And so we are going to just throw it all away. Which is pretty scary. Packages, backend, index. Yeah. And here's the new blank slate that we need. Made me nervous. I was like, maybe I'm not in. Maybe I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And then it's throwing the error that it can't find this. So we need to add these dependencies in. You can see there's the dependency right there. So let me just bring up the terminal. All right, let me execute. That's annoying. Okay, but it's fine. It's done. And then when we ran this, so now when I did a yarn dev in this new state just to see what was going on. What was really confusing was actually everything kind of disappeared because all of these things that we were looking for originally were not there because this isn't totally done. Right, I had to import all of these guys. So I ended up importing, I actually did this. In the end, I imported all of those. Now when I went, why does it hate me? Still doing some work. You can see it's still kind of spinning up. There we go. Okay, now everything's back and we're back into the new state. So that's everything I had to do to, so what did we just do? We may have to draw this out in Excalidraw actually. Here's the old stuff. Let's draw this out in Excalidraw. It's easier. So step one was I created a backend plugin called Code Freeze Hello. That was step one. That's step one. Let's make that stroke black. And let's give it an outline of black. Yeah, step one. Created a backend plugin. Step two. Guys, come on. Step two is migrate backend plugin, which involved create backend plugin function and export. That was step two. And then step three was, this is all related to the plugin itself. And then I wanted to use the new backend system, and that was step two, that was step three. Step three was migrate Backstage backend to new backend system. That's what we've just done here. Step three. Okay, now step four is we are still missing our example plugin. Is still not being called by the new backend system. So step four is call code freeze hello plugin from new backend system. That's what we need to do. How do we do that? Well, we basically need to import it. So if we go back to the documentation, and then we go to building plugins, and we go to overview, create the new plugin. We've got our source plugin TS. It's got this create backend plugin function, and then we need to, good grief, where is it? Configuration. Come on, guys. The migration guide. This is why I wanted to do this tutorial, because I kind of felt like I had to navigate. Here we go. I felt like I had to navigate all over the place just to get this working. So I need to import the backend plugin, and then I need to add it to the backend add here in this new backend. So let's go ahead and do an import. Code freeze. I think the import is actually not going to look like that. It should be internal. And we can get rid of, how to get rid of this. Then stop yelling at me. And then I needed to do backend, add code freeze plugin, save that. And now theoretically we should be able to call. So now that when we make a URL call with we could do localhost 7007/API/ the plugin ID, and our plugin ID was code freeze /hello, and then the endpoint. This get request should work. So let's cross our fingers. And there we go. We get a status. Okay, cool. So that was my experience of creating a new plugin, hello world scaffold of a plugin, migrating it over to the new backend system, and then third, migrating the Backstage backend to the new backend system, and then also instantiating the hello world plugin from the new backend system. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That was the experience. So in the next video, we're actually get back to finishing out how to expand on this on the plugin. Right now, it doesn't do anything, right? And I want to be able to, what I wanted to be able to do from this plugin, wrong directory. What I want to be able to do from this plugin is actually, the next thing we need to do inside service is we need to be able to call an external service and pull in some configuration so that we can call external APIs. And that's when we're in the documentation. We're going to go back to, if we go to plugins, and we're going to go backend APIs and backend plugins, we are going to get back in here and start kind of like expanding on it. So that's it. Thanks for joining me. I'll see y'all later.